So remember the example with the payment discount where the customer paid 1 day too late. So as a user, I extended the payment discount due date on the application entry so that the system could process the payment discount fully automatically. Now, for a company, it could be interesting to set these things as sort of a business rule, and that's what we can do with the payment tolerances. So let's go and have a look at the setup. So first of all, I will go to the general ledger setup, and let's scroll down to the bottom and open the application fast tab. There we go. So here you can see the fields that we can use to set up payment tolerances, and there are two different types of payment tolerances. First, there are the payment discount tolerances, and there are the payment tolerances. Now the first one is one that you only use in combination with payment discounts. And so, for example, companies that are not using payment discounts, they will also never use the payment discount tolerances, but they can still use the payment tolerances. Okay, let's start with the first one. Now, what is this setting doing? Well, it's basically doing automatically what I just did manually. Remember in the example, I extended the payment discount due date with 1 day. And here you can set up this as a business rule. Now suppose that we say that if payments are received or done to vendors 1 or 2 days too late to get the payment discount, we still would like to give the payment discount. That's something that we can do by entering the payment discount grace period. And so for example, if I enter 2 days, this means that payments that are received 2 days too late to get the payment discount still can process the payment discount. So that's what this setting is doing. Now, once you start using payment tolerances, you can select to post them to a specific payment tolerance account instead of the payment discount account. Now, setting up these tolerance accounts is done at the same place as the payment discount account. So on the customer and vendor posting groups, or maybe on the general posting setup, depending on how payment discounts is set up. Then another setting that could be interesting is the warning. And I will enable the warning, which means that if this setting is triggered, the system will show me some additional information, and I still can select as a user whether I would like to process the tolerance or leave it as an open amount. So again, this is extending the payment discount due date with a grace period. Now another thing that we can do is enable payment tolerances, and that's something that the system can use to automatically process small payment differences. And that's something that most companies have to deal with. When customers are paying, or maybe when they're paying vendors, sometimes these small differences occur, maybe a rounding difference or a typo or whatever. And if the amount is small enough, then it will be posted to a payment difference account. Now, instead of having to do this manually, also here we can set up the system based on a percentage or an amount, so that this is something that can be performed automatically. So let's go to the Actions Fast tab, and there I can run the action Change Payment Tolerance. So there we go. First of all, you can decide whether you want to do this for all currencies or per currency. Now this depends on the currencies that you're using. And so for example, if you're using currencies with more or less the same nominal value, like the euro and US dollar, for example, then you can perfectly set this up for all currencies. But if you're using currencies with very different values, then it might be better to set it up by currency. Okay, so first of all, the payment tolerance percentage. So here I can enter a percentage, like let's say 3%. And then the maximum payment tolerance amount. So for very small amounts, the 3% probably will not reach the tolerance amount. But for higher amounts, the 3% might result in a tolerance that's too much. So, and that's why here I can set the maximum amount. So I can specify that the payment tolerance can never be more than, let's say, 2, for example. So in this case, 2 local currency. So Let me click on OK and update the customer and ledger entries. So now the payment tolerance is set. I can then also specify in this case if I want to post it to separate tolerance account and if I want to have the warning, which I will also enable here. Now, to give you some more insight on how the system will now start using this, let's go and have a quick look at a customer, or let's take in this case a vendor account. So now if I go to the vendor ledger entries, so you can see here the different ledger entries of this vendor, and by enabling the payment tolerances, the system has updated these ledger entries. Because now if I scroll to the right, you can see, for example, in this case that there is a maximum payment tolerance amount. And in this case, for each entry, each open entry, this is 2. So the maximum amount that I have set, because the 3% of these amounts result in a higher amount than the 2. So, we will never use an amount higher than 2, as you can see here. So that's the way that the system will process the payment tolerances. So by comparing these settings, here on the customer and the vendor ledger entries with what is actually processed when posting the payment. Now, another thing that's also interesting to know is that you can block payment tolerances on an individual vendor or customer basis. And so, for example, here on the Payments Fast tab, you can see the block payment tolerance field. And so if we don't want to, or if we cannot use payment tolerances for certain vendors or customers, we can block.